a lot of traders focus purely on their technical analysis and their concepts, forgetting that they still need to do some reflection on the individual that they entrust to make those trading decisions. Now guys, that's what today's YouTube video is about. Today we're going to be getting into how we're going to systemize and how we're basically just going to understand the trader. Now guys, the concepts and the points that we are going to speak about today are absolutely the utmost important things that one needs to have in their trading plan. So what I would suggest for you guys is that you guys actually take down each and every one of these points and include them within your trading plan. Now, a trading plan is not only your methods of execution, your methods of exit, your methods of position management, all that other stuff. Your trading plan also should include how you're going to approach trading yourself, how you're going to manage yourself, and how you're going to create routines for yourself. And that's what today's video is about. Today we're going to get into knowing the trader. Now the first thing that you want to have, guys, in your trading plan, the first question that we need to speak about, that we need to have detailed, and guys, it's very important that we actually write these things down. Now we can obviously keep these things in our minds and whatever the case is, but guys, when we write down these things, we ingrain these things into our subconscious mind. Now with our first question, what we want to get into is, why do I want to be a trader? Now guys, this is a very sketchy question, because you can approach this question in two different ways, and I think that it's very important that we go into the two different ways that we can approach this question. Now, number one, when we're answering why do we want to be traders, we need to be as descriptive as possible and as honest as possible. Now, the first way we can approach this question is we put down the real factual reasons as to why we want to be a trader. I want to be a trader because I see people making 6 and 7 figures, and I feel like it's just as easy for me to make that kind of money, and therefore I want to be a trader. So for someone, that can be a real valid reason. And what I want to say is that even a reason like that, as dumb as it sounds, or maybe as not professional as it sounds, that's important, because that is you being honest. This being in your trading plan, or these questions are there so that at a later time we can come back and reflect and observe the change. That's what we want to see. So we're defining why we want to be a trader. The second way we can approach this question is we can approach this question from a future standpoint. Why we want to be a trader based off the goals that we have. So in this case, yes, we're being honest with ourselves why we want to be a trader, but we're not being descriptive as to the current reasons or the current circumstances or situations as to why we are trading or why we want to be a trader. We can then answer this question and say, I want to be a trader because I observe the potential. I can see that people are able to make 6 and 7 figures, and that's the type of person that I observe myself as. I see myself as that person that can overcome and be part of the 10% that are always, or rather that are able to be profitable out of the market, and I'm not going to be in the 90% of these people that are consistently losing money. And that is a valid reason as to why we want to be a trader. Nonetheless, whichever approach you decide to come or conclude on using, we need to define why we want to be a trader. Write it down, make it known. Let's go on to the second point. Now, question number two is, what trader am I? Now, in this question, guys, we need to first of all understand that there are, we'd say, maybe 3 types of traders. There are discretionary traders, there are systematic traders, and I guess there's a mix of the two, which is probably, I don't know, call it whatever you want, but a mix of discretionary versus a systematic trader. Now, what we want to identify or highlight by under the second question of what trader are we want to identify whether we are going to be approaching trading with a systematic approach, or are we going to be approaching trading with a discretionary approach. And that's what we're going to write there. What type of a trader am I? I am a systematic trader that has a bunch of defined systematic rules that I follow, yet my execution based off those rule-based systems is discretionary. So I am defining what kind of a trader I am. When I look at my trading plan and I've defined what kind of a trader I am, going forward in the future, now I know that I'm making decisions based off an objective rule-based system because I am classifying myself as a systematic trader, yet I am opening myself up to making that discretionary decision on whether or not to execute the trade based off whatever discretionary reasons. Doesn't really matter. As much as, I guess, anything, all we want to have is that we've defined ourselves as what kind of a trader we are, and we want to basically move forward with this definition. So we want to be as objective and as systematic as possible, and that's part of us having these questions at the beginning of our trading plan. Now let's go on to the third one, guys. The third question that we're going to need to ask ourselves, the third thing to understand the trader, the individual that we're entrusting, is what are my strengths and weaknesses? And this is probably one of the most important questions that you need to answer and that you need to be absolutely and brutally honest about, because this is where the change starts. Identifying your strengths, working on your strengths, putting yourself in a position that allows you to maximize on those strengths, and then obviously identifying your weaknesses, working on those weaknesses, and putting yourself in a position where you can operate without those weaknesses pulling you down. Now, this is, like I said, very important question. You need to identify, obviously, your strengths and your weaknesses. An example of this would be, my strength is discipline. I am one of the most disciplined individuals, but when it comes to being disciplined to a routine, maybe I'm not as disciplined as possible. So now I've identified a strength that I guess I'm disciplined, and I've identified a weakness that I struggle to follow routines. Now I know that when I'm approaching my trading, my strength is that I'm disciplined. So what does that mean for me and the approach that I'm taking? Discipline works well in a rule-based, systemized, approach to trading. So now I know that I'm going to be operating within my strength, and then because I have a weakness of where I can't follow routines, now I know that my trading plan or my system should enforce routines. Because why? I want to put myself in a position where I'm able to function off my strengths, and then at the same time put myself in a position where I can work on my weaknesses. And that's the importance of this question. Anyway, we'll go on to the fourth question that we're going to need to ask ourselves, that we need to have written down and defined. Now, the fourth question is, what are my targets? Now, the reason why this question is important is because this question, first of all, reinforces our reasons of why do we want to trade. Because we'll find a lot of the time that a lot of our targets somehow relate to the reasons why we want to trade. So maybe we saw that, okay, cool, one of the reasons why we're trading is because people are able to make 7 figures during trading. Now we know that one of our targets is probably going to be to start off making 5 figures, and then 6 figures, and then 7 figures. So those are our targets. What we want to do answering this question is that we want to break down our targets. We want to know what our self-development targets are. What person do you want to be as a trader within the next year, within the next 6 months, within the next 3 months, within the next month, within the next week? You need to define your targets for yourself as a trader. Aside from that, we obviously need to define the monetary targets and all of those other things. How much do you want to make for yourself within a year? How much do you want to make for yourself? Or rather, what is your expected? What are you going to aim for within the space of a week? What are you going to aim for within the space of a year? What are you going to aim for within the space of whatever time? And that's you aiming for your monetary targets, and as well as your self-development targets. More important than the monetary targets is your self-development targets. You want to make sure that by next month, you are not the same trader as you are right now. You want to have a target, something that you can work towards becoming a better trader than you were the previous day or the previous week. Guys, in trading, and I guess this is a tip, and this is something that will help someone that is kind of struggling, that I guess just needs that extra push. In trading, the only thing that you are going to compare yourself against is yourself. The person that you were yesterday is the only reference that you have as to who you are right now and what you're doing for yourself in the future. If you want to compare yourself to yourself. And as long as you are becoming a better trader every time you do that self-review and you notice that you know one thing than you did before, you're doing one thing better than you did it yesterday, then you are making progress. Not comparing yourself to anyone else that is making 7 or 8 or 9 figures. No, that's not the way. You are your own barometer. Now, let's go on to our 5th question, guys. The next question that we want to find the next question that we want to ask ourselves and define is, what financial instruments do we trade? Remember, we always want to cut out as much information as possible, streamline our process, make that make that next decision a lot easier to make. So one of those ways that we make that next decision a lot easier to make is obviously by refining the financial instruments that we do trade. So obviously, depending on what our targets are, depending on what our strengths and weaknesses are, depending on our temperament and what kind of trader we are, and also depending on the reasons why we want to trade, we then begin to isolate our financial instruments. If obviously maybe you have those ridiculous targets and a little bit of capital, then you should be restricting your financial instruments to maybe your currencies so that you can prepare yourself, allow yourself to hit those targets, to still function within your strengths, to still work on your weaknesses, to still honor the type of trader that you've defined yourself as, and then obviously fulfill the reasons why you want to be a trader in the first place. So you need to define and obviously limit those financial instruments that you're trading. You need to know that every day, every week, every year, these are the instruments that I'm trading. This is where my focus is. Now, as a rule of thumb, I would kind of restrict my instruments to not more than 10 different financial instruments. Once you're looking at more than 10 things, then I guess it just makes things a little bit more difficult. You can't be as efficient as you would like to be if you're looking at too many things. You want to try and laser focus every moment you can laser focus. Now, let's go on to question number 6, guys. Question number 6 is, we need to obviously restrict and define our, I guess one would call this maybe our tools, the tools that we're going to use. A broker is a tool, a charting provider is a tool, so we need to define those as well. And by defining those, you need to do research. The reason why we define our brokers is because we need to know why we are using a particular broker. If I say that XNES is my preferred broker, which it is, and I definitely will leave the link for you guys in the description below, because I found that that is an absolutely beautiful broker. Aside from all of the manipulations and all of those things, XNES doesn't really do that quite often. They do have their own discrepancies, obviously, but in terms of, a lot of brokers don't offer customer care, and I think that's what I value the most about XNES, is that if something is wrong, you can DM them right now, and within 5 minutes you will have a response and your issue will be, I guess, starting to be dealt with. So you need to obviously know the brokers that you're using, and the reason why you're defining this is that you know why you're using a broker. Are you using a broker because someone told you to use a broker, or are you using a broker because your broker offers you a zero spread account and you're a scalper? That's a valid reason, not because someone enticed you or told you to use a broker. Use a broker that, all the other questions that we've been asking ourselves, guys, use a broker that is obviously working in conjunction with the type of trader that you are, with your targets, with the financial instruments that you trade. Obviously, if you trade VIX, volatility index, boom and crash and whatever, you can't go and use IC Markets as a broker, because IC Markets does not have synthetic indices. That's what we're talking about here. We need to be defined. We need to understand why. Now, we obviously define our brokers and our charting providers. For my charting providers, I love to use Owanda as a charting provider, just because they don't have gaps and all of those nice things. Whichever charting provider you choose to use, obviously do your research and understand why you're using them. Aside from that, like I was saying, guys, apologies for that, I do use TradingView to view my charts. So you need to define these different charting providers that you use, and you need to understand why you're using them. If you like to view your charts on MT4, then have a reason for that. Don't just do it just because. I use TradingView over my MetaTrader 4. Why? Because TradingView offers me a lot more tools at my disposal. Everything is a lot more easier to use. They have a beautiful user interface that makes trading look a little bit less complicated than MetaTrader 4 does. So I have reasons why I use my charting providers. Anyway, after this, guys, now we're going into the next set of questions. 3 important questions that we need to have in our trading plan that define what we do pre-market. So before we actually come into our trading day, before we start making those decisions on whether we're going to buy or sell, we need to have a pre-market set of questions that we ask ourselves. So let's get into the first one, guys. We'll start off with number 7, and number 7 is, what is my pre-market routine? Now we need to, apologies for that, guys, my apologies. We need to have a pre-market routine. Now what does that mean for us? We need to have a system that defines what we do pre-market. Before, let's say my trading day starts at 9 a.m. Do I, for example, take a jog, meditate, and obviously I'm doing best case scenario for this example. Some people have different different routines. They maybe drink a cup of coffee before they go into the markets. Maybe they, I don't know, maybe they talk to someone that makes them feel okay. Nonetheless, doesn't really matter what you do as a pre-market routine. You just need to have something that you do before the market, or what this actually does. And the reason why having a pre-market routine is absolutely important is because it primes your mind. When your mind gets into that pre-market routine, your mind automatically knows what to follow. What kind of mental state does your mind need to go into because of this routine, obviously, that you've developed that has now become a habit. So you eventually end up, I guess, just kind of beating around the bush, and I guess just playing hand in hand with your subconscious, giving your subconscious small things so that your subconscious can reward you back with the results and obviously the consistency of redoing these small systems that you're doing for yourself every single day. So we want to develop a routine whenever we can, and that's obviously paramount in trading. If you look at any trader, they've developed a routine for themselves, regardless of whether that routine is just analysis routine, whether it's a pre-market routine, whether it's a routine on execution, whether it's a routine on analysis, whether it's a routine on their trading times, whether it's a routine on anything, guys. These traders, or any trader that you know that has been successful out of the financial markets, has developed some sort of a routine that enables them to see those consistent results. You need to be able to execute consistently to see consistent results, and that's why we develop routines. Now let's get into our number 8, guys. We need to have, or rather let's ask ourselves, have I reviewed all my previous trades? So obviously we took trades yesterday, we took trades last week. Before we go into the new trading day, we need to have an understanding of what happened with our trades yesterday. What do we need to change yesterday? What do we need? We need to know about those positions that we took the day before, or the week before, or the trades that we have executed before this trading routine or this trading day starts. We need to be aware of all of those things. Why? Because that data will help us make better informed decisions. Now let's go on to question number 9. We need to ask ourselves, have I completed my analysis routine? More important than anything, I want this question to make your guys' mind go back to, have I completed my own analysis? That's what's the most important thing here, guys. You need to be doing your own analysis. Don't ever let your analysis be influenced by anyone or any other external factor. Why? Because if your analysis is influenced by an external factor, guys, remember, I'm even coming absolutely close to this camera. Remember, guys, that we make our decisions based off our process of analysis. If our process of analysis is not ours, not from our own mind, then that means the decisions that we're about to make are influenced from outside or rather external factors. And that's what we don't want, guys. We want our trading to be our own. We want to see that the way that we are doing things is or is not working. That's how we change things. And the only way we'll be able to do that is if we're only doing our analysis on our own. If, for example, you're buying, or you're looking for a buy on USD ZAR because some other dude with TradingView told you to look for a buy on USD ZAR. Now, that result is not a result, whether that trade goes good or goes bad. That kind of a result is not a result that you yourself can duplicate. And that's what we want. We develop a system, we develop a routine so that we can duplicate, redo the system, and obviously receive those consistent results by executing our system consistently. Now, if you have not done your own analysis, obviously you can't expect consistent results. Now that is what this last question was kind of there to bring your mind to. You have to complete your own analysis. And by the way, this question obviously emphasizes that this is an analysis routine. So there needs to be a routine for your analysis. What concepts do you use? What time frames do you use? There needs to be a routine. Now guys, we're getting into the final question of this, this knowing the trader, and this pre-trading template type of thing. So within our trading plan, last question that we need to ask ourselves, and I left this one blank because this is the most important question and the one that I value the most. Now guys, question number 10 is, have I reserved time for self-development? Have you as a trader reserved time for self-development? How you want to answer this question is you want to answer this question by creating a routine for self-development. Whether that is giving yourself 5 minutes every day to just be quiet and think about absolutely nothing, enter a nice clear headspace, or whether that's you maybe giving yourself time every day to learn something new, that all falls under self-development, regardless of whether that time is used during meditation or something of that nature, or whether that time is used, obviously maybe you improving on your systems, maybe you improving on the concepts that you use, maybe you learning new concepts, maybe you just improving and refining the current routines that you have in place. Regardless of what it is, have you reserved time for self-development? If ever your answer is no to that question, start there. Hopefully you guys have actually enjoyed the content in today's YouTube video, guys. Try to be as open, try to be as informative as possible. Otherwise, guys, this is T.Mayne. Hopefully you guys actually enjoy the content in the channel. Otherwise, like I was saying, guys, if you have received the value, definitely do drop this video a like. Let me know that it was positively influential to you. Otherwise, if it's your first time on the channel, you better definitely do subscribe, because I would appreciate it, guys. We're trying to get to that 1K subscribers so that YouTube can allow us to go live on the platform. We'll have conversations like this. We'll go into analysis. We'll go into concepts. A lot of the stuff live. There'll be that in-person interaction. So definitely do subscribe so that we can get to this 1K. Start going live. Start sharing the value live, guys. Let's do that. I'm excited about it. I know you're excited about it. Otherwise, like I was saying, this is T.Mayne, your FX Chaser's mentor. I will see you guys in the future videos. Otherwise, cheers, guys.